Hi folks, I'm Steve Butler. Today we're building this compact, sturdy workbench, perfect for the small shop space. Come see how we do it here in the garage. Let's have a look at our project. We're using off-the-shelf construction-grade material. We have a bench top that's made up of 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood, and on top of that, I put on a piece of masonite or hardboard, and then when this gets wrecked, you can just unscrew it, put on another piece, and you basically have refinished the top of your bench. Now, with the 2 layers of plywood, we create a small tool well, and we just attach some cove molding on here so pencils or tape measures won't roll off. We're going to attach a nice 9-inch vise to the end, and I'm not going to make a drawer for this project because I need some more storage space for some routers and drills, so we're just going to have 2 shelves made up of 1/2-inch plywood. All right, let's get started. All right, the joinery for the bench is basically a series of dados and rabbet joints. We have 4 posts or legs, and you can see we have a rabbet joint cut out at the top, a notch, a couple of notches for our shelf supports, and then a rabbet joint at the bottom. And what that does, we have a rabbet joint or a lap joint, you can call it, for the feet. And that is going to be glued and screwed and hold that together. We have an end cap for the top. And then we're going to cut a couple of rabbets on our front and back support. We have our shelf supports, which are a 2x3 spruce lumber, and we just run a groove or a dado along the length of it, and that's going to house our plywood shelf. Now, it's real easy to get turned around on this. You have 4 legs, you have a right and a left on either side, so take your time, draw your lines out, double check before you start cutting in the material. Now, this material, this is great. I utilized some pieces I had left over from a previous project. We have some newer material I purchased, some with a little bit of finish on. This is a workbench. It doesn't matter. You can paint it up if you wanted to. You could use a different material and beef it up, but the joinery is still the same. We have some dados and rabbets, and let's go cut those on the table saw. I have a collection of DIY books from the 50s and 60s, and I was going through one of them one day and saw a bunch of these plans for workbenches. And not quite like this, but pretty close, so we just modified it, made it our own. And the first one, you know, we put a drawer in there. I needed some storage for some hand tools. And in this one, we just used 2 shelves and made it our own. It's a nice project. All right, I've set up my stacked dado blade set in the table saw. Now, the standard dimension for a 2x4 ends up being 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. But sometimes, you know, there might be some slight discrepancies coming out of the mill. So the best way, just use the material you're using. So first cut we're making is a rabbet joint or a 1/2 lap joint at the end of our post. Now that's to accommodate the full width of our 2x4. So I'm just raised the blade to 3/4 inch. That's how deep we want that rabbet joint to be. And I just used our 2x4, spun the blade till it's flush with the edge of it. And then it's kind of like a no-brainer. You don't have to go wrong. I have my fence set there. I can't go past it, make a mistake. So make sure you have your safety glasses on, and we're just going to go ahead and cut that top rabbet joint on all of our leg posts. Okay, that looks great. 3/4 inch deep. Now I'm just going to move this over, make a series of cuts on the dado blades until we hog out that whole rabbet. Then I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing for all of our posts. Okay, now that we have that rabbit joint cut, what I'm going to do now is cut a shoulder. And what that does, it helps accommodate our end cap. When our end cap's on there, our other piece will come right along and nestle right into there. Now the nice thing about it, we don't even have to move the fence or change the blade height at all. That's where we had our rabbit cut. Just going to turn this on its edge and make our cut and cut out that 3/4 of an inch shoulder. Okay, that looks great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the rabbit out to accommodate the foot. And I don't even have to change my fence. I don't have to move that at all. I don't have to change the height of the blade. And you want to avoid multiple setups. Just keep it the same and make all your cuts, and that way you don't introduce, the chance of making a mistake or anything like that. So I'm just going to keep that the same. Use our miter gauge. You want to back it up with that and cut out our 3/4 inch depth for our rabbit joint. Okay, that looks great. It's coming along nicely. Let's see how that's working out. So before I go ahead and change my fence setting or my blade height, I want to cut the rabbit joints in our end caps that are going to fit into there. I do have to move the fence over a bit, but the blade height stays the same. So I've just made my witness mark right on there, and I'm just going to butt that up. Make sure so that my blade is flush with the line. Give a little push now and then on your soft fence. Over the years, a little wear and tear. 2 3/4 inches, and that's what I want. Okay. There we go. That fits well. It's nice and flush with the end of our rabbit joint there, and that's where our cross stretcher or our front piece will fit right in there and cap that off nicely. Now, we're just going to go ahead and cut out our feet for the bench. And again, that's just a rabbit joint or a lap joint cut in there, 3/4 inch depth as well. We don't even have to change the blade. Just going to move the fence over. So I'm going to make one cut. These are evenly spaced, laid it out. Turn it over. You can see where my pencil line lines up. Make a second cut. Do that the same for that line. Bring the fence over. Turn my board around. Make another pass. And then we'll just make a series of cuts and hollow out the center part. Nice, that worked out well. Before we glue these up, I'm just going to trim, cut a 45 on the ends just to soften that so it doesn't break off and just gives a nicer appearance. Now, how I determined the placement of these, I just simply took our end cap, brought it over, and drew lines right down. That way the posts were perfectly aligned up. Great, that's looking good. Now, what we need to do is cut a rabbet on our front and back pieces just at the end, and that will cap over the foot and our end cap piece. Again, the blade doesn't get moved up or down at all. Just simply going to line it up. And it's an 1.5 inch wide rabbet, and that's just the thickness of our material we're using. So just line this up. And again, I'm just going to butt my fence up there, make one pass, turn it around, make another, move my fence, and just nibble away at it. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could just extend this, make it longer, make it a little wider. The same style though. Our top is 4 feet and the base is 3 feet wide, and it makes it perfect for a small shop space, which I have. And again, it's really, really sturdy, and it just fits in perfectly. Okay, now what we're gonna do, we're finished with those rabbet joints. We have to cut the notches in our posts that are gonna accommodate our shelf supports. We're using 2x3 material, and one of them starts right at the foot level, right at the top of that rabbet joint, and then we're going to cut another one 10 inches up. And that's arbitrary, that's just what I want for 2 shelves. Put routers and drills in there. You can make it higher or lower, whatever you like. So put my marks on there, move my fence over, and I'm just going to start at the top of that rabbet joint and make one pass, get my next board, make another one, move the fence over to the inside of that line, and then make a cut and nibble away at it. Now I'm going to do this in 2 passes. We have our blade at 3/4 of an inch, and then I need to raise it another 3/4 of an inch. So you don't want to take off too much material once, you'll get a lot of tear out. All right, again, glasses and dust. So now I'm just going to take the board I'm using, the material I'm using, our 2x3, and I'm just going to raise the blade until it's flush with the top. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just cut away at it. Okay, that worked out really well. Now, I've laid out my measurements. I have another shelf support 10 inches up from the top of that shelf support. We're just going to lower our blade, do it in 2 passes. So we're just going to take 3/4 of an inch off, 1 pass. Set up our saw fence and do exactly the same thing. there we go. That's it. We have all the joinery cut on our post, our end caps, our front and back pieces to make this bench. What we need to do, though, is run our groove down the center of our shelf supports. Now that's 1/2 inch wide, so I need to take one blade out of my stacked dado set. What I like best about it is, I mean, obviously this is just made out of construction lumber, 2x4s, but they're really, really sturdy. You can paint it if you prefer the look of that, but you could also replace the 2x4 material and use some hardwood, and you have a really substantial workbench. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue up our foot and our end caps to our leg posts just to make up one of the sides. I'm going to put some glue on there, shoot in a couple of brads, clamp them, put that aside, do the other side, and then once those are dried, we will put on our front and back pieces and attach our shelf pieces. Now you want to make sure you have everything ready at hand, a cloth for excess glue. You don't need a lot, but you know. Put that up flush. Have a mallet if you need to. Just going to throw a couple of brads in. Still hold that in place, act as a temporary clamp essentially. Now we'll just do the same on our end caps here. All right, I took the clamps off and then I pre-drilled, and I'm using these pocket hole screws. They're square head screws, but they just have this sort of built-in washer, and it just finishes up nicely. It just makes that a nice little tidy look. So what I'm going to do, I've clamped one side of the bench down, and I'm simply going to throw some glue into our notches, and the same thing, a couple of brads to hold it in place. We'll clamp it. We'll put on our front piece, and then we'll, when that's dry, turn it over and do the same thing for the other side. Okay, that looks great. Just going to turn this over. We'll slide in one of the shelves and then go ahead and glue up the other side. Yeah, I hope people give this project a try, especially if you're a beginner. I mean, this project's good for all levels of woodworkers, but there's nothing like building your own workbench. It was like the toolbox project or the hand plane project. Just gives you a great sense of pride when you see it finished and you've attached the vise, and now you have a workplace as well. All right, that looks great. Let me show you what I did. Once the glue was cured and all the parts were dry on the bench, I took the clamps off and I added these little pine cleats. They were just some offcuts I had, and I just attached them to the end of the shelf, and that just stiffens it up a little more, and it also tidies it up. So when you're looking at the bench from the ends, you just don't see that raw plywood edge, and it just makes it look a little neater. I also took some 1/2 inch stock I had lying around. You could use 1/4 inch, whatever you have, but try to make sure it's a hardwood. And I cut and attached these little pads. And what that does is when the bench is on the ground, it just sits on the ground without rocking as much. Okay, so now I'm just going to take this off the bench, put it on the ground, and we're going to attach our plywood tops. All right, I went ahead and I ripped our two pieces that are going to make up our top for the bench to size. I just clamped it in place, and I'm just going to go ahead and drill some screw holes, and we'll attach this one. Now I'm just going to countersink them. You don't want any of these screw heads telegraphing through. You know, you want this nice and sturdy. All right, just going to go around and put these screws in. Okay, that looks great. It's coming together. So now we take our second piece, which I've cut to the same length. In this case, it's 48 inches, but I cut it at 14 inches wide. You know, and it's a little arbitrary if you want just a smaller, not as wide tool well. That's entirely up to you. But I'm going to do the same thing here. Just try and line it up so that it's flush all around. And you can see how that's coming together. This creates our tool well. I'm going to attach that, and then we're just going to take some cove molding, and this will create the tray in a sense. This will stop pieces from rolling off. All right, let's go ahead and attach our second piece of plywood. That looks great. This is turning into be rock solid. Really nice. So I think what I'll do is I'll go and attach that cove molding, and then we'll cut our hardboard top piece. I wanted a tool well, and we just created that by doubling up the plywood to 3/4 inch plywood. The top piece is cut narrower. We added the cove molding. And what I like about it is, you know, a bench broom will still get in here. It's flexible enough. It'll clean out the sawdust without it being a collecting spot for old tools and dust that never gets cleaned out. All right, so now I'm just going to cut our hardboard top to the exact width, which is 14 inches of our second plywood top. And I'm going to make two cuts. I'm just going to trim the edges, so I've set my saw at 15 inches. I'm going to make a rip cut, set the fence to 14 inches, do it again, and then we'll go and assemble that on our bench. Now, make sure you have your safety glasses on. The dust collector will be on, but this stuff's really fine. It kicks up a real fine dust. So make sure you're wearing a dust mask, even if it's an inexpensive one like this. It's better than nothing. All right, that fits really well. Just going to go ahead and pre-drill and countersink some screw holes, and we'll attach this. Okay, that looks really nice. See how that works? Look, came together nicely. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a little 1/4 inch round over bit and just take my router and round over the edges. That's another reason you don't want those screws right to the edge. You don't want that bit hitting the screws. Great. There we go. That looks great. We got rid of that sharp edge. Now, I'm just going to install our 9-inch vise right on the end here. The style is based on what's called an Eastern European bench, workbench, and that's where you get the tool well. We've added the vise on the end. If you wanted to, you could get more of a traditional, what they call tail or end vise from any of the woodworking stores and attach that. All right, that worked out really well. I'm just going to cut a couple of pieces of wood, use them as pads for our bench vise. The shelves look great, plenty of room to hold our tools, our drills, our routers. Super. As usual, I had a lot of fun building this project with you. I hope you come back and see us again in the garage.
Just found your number, thought I'd drop you a line. You know I've been out on this road such a long, long time. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing just fine. But hey, I'm doing fine out here on the road. As long as I have friends to call, I'm never alone. Folks wonder how I take all that driving on.
Let's get it going.